largely spoken about, even today, the rural market is still largely untapped. The investments are perceived as risky, and the key players, that is the operators and entrepreneurs, governments and regulators, and technology suppliers who must collaborate to bring about change, are a long way from seeing the opportunity in a mutually cohesive way. However, the explosion in the use of mobile communications, including the rural areas, are providing indications that ICTs that are perceived as useful tools for both socio-economic development and business could attract much more revenues than previously seen, and could also greatly impact the lives of rural inhabitants for good. To modulate the ebb and flow of thought and information, we have with us as our moderator, Mr. Kunal Bajaj, Managing Director, BDA Connect. Sir, I request you to please come up on stage.
Mr. Bajaj started his career in New York with McKinsey & Company, including assignments in New Delhi involving McKinsey's knowledge services. Prior to joining BDA Connect, Sir worked as a consultant for Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Following TRI, Mr. Kunal advised on projects in India for the World Bank, multinational companies, venture organizations, and startup companies. As a managing director, Sir not only leads BDA's initiatives in the country, but has also led widely acclaimed industry papers such as Wireless India in partnership with Confederation of Indian Industry and Future of Mobile VAS in partnership with the Stanford University. Sir has 3 degrees from University of Pennsylvania, graduating with magna cum laude honors. A BSc in economics from the Wharton School with majors in finance and management. A BSc from engineering school with a major in computer science. And an MSc with telecommunications and networking, also from the engineering school. We welcome you, sir, to Communique 09. I would now request sir to kindly deliver his presentation.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see that the students are still completely engaged at this latest stage in the day after listening to so many speakers throughout. We're going to structure the following 45 minutes that we have for this panel discussion with starting off with some slides that I'll be presenting to you to set the stage, and then we'd like to invite the rest of the panelists on the stage so that we can have the interactive discussion in the Q&A. And we'll close it off by opening it to open questions to the students. So please think of some hard-hitting questions for the rest of the panel that will be up here a little bit later. Thank you so much to SITM again for having me here this year. Last year was an excellent experience, and I'm very happy to be back and see the Institute growing in all ways. Let's jump straight to the presentation. Next slide, please. There's 3 major problems when you talk about serving ICT to the rural areas today. These problems are centered around the ability to serve the rural population and to bring ICT connectivity to them. The first major problem is that there's a high total cost of ownership to the end users, which basically means how much do they need to invest to be able to be connected and to leverage ICT services. The second is around the lower revenue streams and the lower profitability that operators can actually earn from those types of customers. And the third being the higher cost to serve them. We'll go into each of these 3 one by one in the following slides. Next slide, please. So if we look at the first piece of it, which is around the total cost of ownership, as you can see from the chart on the left side, the total cost of ownership has been declining pretty substantially over the past several years, as offers like lifetime prepaid, incoming free, lower cost devices and things like that have been making their way into the market. You're getting very affordable telecom connectivity available. But if you look on the right side, even with the lower numbers that are out there today, it's still a substantial percentage of the overall earnings of someone who lives in the rural area. So if you look at the fact that total cost of ownership is about $35 today, but their annual income is still $240 only, you're talking about a percentage which is well above, is well in the range of about 15%. The global average for spending on telecom connectivity is less than 6%. So it's still a very substantial chunk of their overall earnings, and therefore needs to be a major investment decision before they come on the network. Next slide. The other piece of it from the operator's perspective is if you look at the revenue pieces. So on the left side is data which goes into the average usage of a rural customer today. It talks about how many outgoing minutes, how many incoming minutes, how many SMSs, things like that. When you take that average bucket of usage and you translate it into what it means for EBITDA margins and revenues, which is what's there on the right side, you find that essentially your total ARPU is about 100 rupees. So you're talking about slightly over $2 that you're getting from your incremental rural subscribers. And off of that $2, you've actually got to recover your operating expenses, look at your spectrum and license fees and all those other things, and you essentially end up with an EBITDA margin of 14%. If you think about that in contrast to the 30-40% EBITDA margins on average that telcos in India are seeing today, then obviously this is a much less attractive market that they're going into, and it's dragging down and acting as a major weight to the overall EBITDA margin of the organization. Next slide, please. And the third piece about OPEX, about actually trying to serve the rural subscribers, if you see on the left side, you'll notice that the actual operating cost of serving rural subscribers is substantially higher, driven primarily by energy costs, which is a diesel to run the gensets because of power not being available. And therefore, that translates into a 13-month break-even for an average rural GSM customer as compared to an urban GSM customer who will break even in the first or second month. So again, you have 14% EBITDA margins. It's going to take you over a year to break even on them. So the focus of the telcos and their interests is it really going to be there in the rural spaces. Next slide, please. But there are some interesting innovations that are taking place in the industry, and I know you guys have heard about these through other speakers today. But if we look at access devices, where a lot of work is happening today, and we're going to discuss this in detail during the panel as well, you have the emergence of thin clients and netbooks, which are really providing to rural communities and to the lower strata of the population a new way to come online and to access data and information. And what that does is that gives them an alternative way where they have not seen a PC before, they've never seen the internet, they don't necessarily know what Microsoft Windows is supposed to look like. What you need to give them is you need to give them a solution that they're going to be comfortable with. And so we see a major source of growth coming from this particular area. Next slide, please. And finally, if we just look at what the government is doing today, they're rolling out this concept of a community service center. So it's a shared access point of presence where you have a broadband connection coming in, you have someone who's an entrepreneur who owns that, who operates it on behalf of the government, and is actually bringing the internet and connectivity and experiences to the rest of the community population. But if we look at the major challenge with CSCs today, one of the challenges they're facing is that most of the revenues are actually coming from non-internet related services. They're earning their revenues from being a photo studio or from showing movies or things like that, which are not actually related to the ICT core services themselves. So that's the last slide of the stage setting presentation. I'd like to call the MCs back to invite the speakers onto the stage, and then we will go into each of these points with the panelists. Thank you.